All right, Gareth, how's it going, man?
Doing well. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, man, thanks for hopping on here. Well, hey, why don't we just start with, who you are and what you do and where you're from?
Sure. So I am a mixing engineer and mastering engineer predominantly at the moment. And I also do finishing, producing, and full track production. And I have a background as a drummer and musical director as well. I started playing drums quite young, and I was working as a drummer for the last 10 years or so. I'm from Australia, originally Melbourne, Australia, and a couple of years ago, my girlfriend and I went to Vietnam for a month to try out working remotely. She's a designer, and I thought I'd take like a mixing rig, and we ended up in Vietnam for a month, and then a month turned into three, and that turned into 6 months, and then we ended up kind of just being here, and I found myself being sort of like accidentally forcing myself into full-time remote production as a result of COVID and living in Vietnam.
Right on, man. Good deal. Well, cool. Well, hey, what were things like before? What was kind of your reason for reaching out? What were you trying to grow or problems to solve? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, um, as I mentioned, I'd already had a background as a musician, and I was working as a musician, and I was building up the mixing and production clientele, and I'd been doing it for a few years, slowly building up, and the word of mouth was going, and people were finding out about what I did and liked what I did, but it wasn't quite going fast enough for me to make this economically viable long term. And so I knew I needed to make some improvements in the way I was doing things. And I started checking out business podcasts, and I started checking out music business podcasts and checking out various different things, and came across your podcast and just completely devoured it in a really short amount of time. Went through every episode and really enjoyed it. But the things I really needed to improve was I needed to figure out how to make this as I said, it was going, but I needed to make it more economically viable to really make it a sustainable long-term career. And I knew there'd be some improvements I could make. And I really liked the way you spoke about your work and spoke about the way you work with producers. And I felt there was something we could do together that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people that get to a point where things are good, but then they're kind of
Mm.
at a sticking point. Like, okay, where do I go from here? I'm not sure how to get from here to here, even though here is pretty good, right? So totally, man. Well, what are things like now? So we worked together for a number of months there. Did you hit goals that you wanted to? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it started working. The work we were doing together started to pay off a lot quicker than I expected. I gave myself, I thought maybe it would take 6 months, 6 to 12 months to really start to see results. But honestly, within like 2 to 3 months, I was already pretty jam packed. Um, uh, you are really good at identifying the sort of really knuckling down and figuring out really where my weak spots were. And I had a lot of mindset issues and had this thinking that it's going to take years to develop the income to be able to sustain myself full time. But as soon I found out that I had the experience and I had the networks from being a musician, I just hadn't really figured out how to put it all together yet in a way that made sense for artists. And you were really great at sort of helping me refine my offer and figuring out, even on our first call together, you say, oh, you should look into doing finishing producing. And I was like, I already kind of do that, but I didn't know it was a thing. A lot of the artists I was working with, I was doing co-production and then sort of mixing and mastering afterwards. And you were like, that's a thing. People do that. That's their finishes. And, it gave me the confidence to really embrace that part of what I do and not necessarily feel like I have to be a start to a producer to be a producer. I can be a finishing producer and be really good at that. And it's valuable to artists and especially self-producing artists. I learned to connect with those a lot. But yeah, you helped me figure out my offer. That you helped me figure out how to be a leader as a producer and how to connect and understand clients. You helped me sort of figure out the pricing to try and make it more economically viable. You helped me with the refining my website and the copy and learning how to sort of address artists' needs with that. I mean, just the other day, I've had a few people say like, oh, your website went to it. It was really simple. But I just really liked the way you sort of spoke to my needs really quickly, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, that was really, really cool.
Love it.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, helped me sort of identify and helped me just sort of embrace learning how to, you know, share what I do better online. Going remote, you know, as quickly as I did, you know, I'd built up a word of mouth career as a musician, as a drummer, but I wasn't really that familiar yet with how to have an online brand. I was better with being behind the scenes. That's the way I built up my drumming career. But learning how to be more visible online was still new to me. And you helped me sort of gain the confidence or the taste, or I guess maybe just the, I don't know how to say it, but yeah, you sort of push me. Even like the first few weeks, you're like, all right, you're going to post a couple of times this week. And I was like, oh God, I'm going to do that. But once you get into it and, you know, have someone sort of pushing you to do it, you start straight away to see results. You're like, oh, this is a thing. This works. People straight away started hitting me up for stuff. That are, you know, friends from uni, friends from my music scene connections back in Australia. Straight away start to see results. And yeah, you know, it's helpful to have someone just there go, hey, do this.
Yeah. It's not always about like, you know, needing to be I'd say very few of the people, you know, that we work with are trying to be like influencers, you know, like a small handful that are trying to do that kind of thing, which nothing wrong with that. But yeah, it don't have to be that. It's just more, there's so much stuff going on, right? Like if we don't show up at least a little bit, like we can't expect people to like remember us or like the, you know, because we're all inundated with so much information.
Totally,
so yeah,
absolutely.
even just a little bit of like, oh yeah, what's Gareth up to? Oh cool, yeah, man, he's doing this, sweet. I should hit him up. You know, it could be as simple as that. You know, you don't have to be the next big you know, YouTube star unless you want to. But
Totally.
cool. Well, you sort of answered this a little bit earlier with with the podcast thing.
Yeah.
But if you have any more to expand on, we can do that. If not, that's cool. But you know, I guess the next question is why Dark Label specifically out of all the options? Why come with us?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, as I said before, I checked out the podcast. I loved it. I learned a lot. I really dug your tone and your vibe, and I guess how direct you were, and you know, you had a way of expressing things. I actually just the other day started going back to the podcast just to sort of freshen up on some of those things again. But you know, you're really straight to the point and had so much information that really related to what I was, you know, trying to figure out. And I checked in with a few of your other artists and clients. You know, it's great that you would actually do promote your artists that you work with online, and I spoke to some of them and found out about their experiences, and you know, sort of relayed where I'm at, and they're like, oh yeah, I think he could help you. And yeah, then we spoke together, and it seemed like, you know, you understood where I was at, and you know, it seemed like you could help me get to where I needed to be, and it just sort of made logical sense. And honestly, I did actually look around for other options, but I couldn't really find anyone who compared, who did the one-on-one thing, you know, in the same way that you did. I found a few other options, but it seemed like the one-on-one thing was not as refined or catered to what I needed as much as what you did.
Why was the one-on-one important in your decision making? I guess I'm actually just curious for me.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, everyone's got unique circumstances. You know, I'm in this circumstance where I have a particular set of skills and a particular personality, a particular sort of client, and I'm hanging out, you know, in Vietnam doing a thing, you know, doing this online remote thing. You know, we've all got our own unique stuff. So just signing up to some template program online wouldn't necessarily make sense, but we'll get the same results. And yeah, and I guess, you know, coming back to things that you did help me with, you know, we were chatting about it through our sessions, and you were saying that, like, the first few months, as well as all the technique stuff that we were going through and the process stuff we were going through, and it was literally just like mindset conversations we were having every week that I'd, you know, have someone to bounce off what I was figuring out or trying to go through it that week. And then you would help me with some sort of mindset stuff. And that was the biggest growth. This is the way you think about your work. is I was expecting that, but actually going through it is a really different thing. I was expecting, yeah, it's going to be some mindset changes, but when you actually experience the mindset changes and you really experience solving these particular problems in the way you think about things, it changes everything, really. The whole game changes.
Yeah, that's, you mentioned in the beginning you were surprised at how fast it went, and different people have different experiences. It doesn't always go faster, some a little faster, some a little slower. But I think with you, why there were relatively quick changes is you went through some pretty big like mindset shifts really quick, because most of this stuff is just us in our own way. We are in our own way, right? Like everybody does that. So if you can have someone kind of chip away at that, then yeah, the most of this, like what keeps us slow is just like uncertainty, and like it could be a lack of confidence or courage, or just like we don't know, or there's a fear or something, so we kind of don't take action, right? I mean, that's generally what a lot of it is. And when you start chipping away at that stuff, you start taking a little bit more action, a little bit more of this, so yeah, it starts to just speed up faster. I just find most of the time it's, there's some techniques and cool little techie stuff you could do with someone. Most of the time it's like they kind of know, especially people in dark label, right? Like most of them know what to do, right? But it's like, okay, well, why aren't we, right? What's that thing? So yeah, I would say that was probably my most or the most fun for me was doing all this stuff up in the beginning, because it's just cool.
Absolutely.
Like the whole time I knew what was going to happen on the other side, right? For you, it was probably maybe like, okay, slowly but surely getting through this, each call probably opens up but I sort of know what happens after. And I was excited about that. Well, hey, last little question here is just,
I've got one more thing to add. Like I was thinking about like the one-on-one thing, and I guess I was thinking further about it before, like all these like mindset things, you think you can sort of figure them out by yourselves, or you think you can sort of figure them out maybe with a friend, another producer friend or a close mate's going to help you figure it out. But if you've literally got someone who's, it's their job and they're doing it every day, and they've helped hundreds of other producers going through pretty similar issues, like there's nothing that can quite compare to that. Your friend, it's not their job to be solving everyone else's issues as a full-time job. They solve their own issues, and they've got their own particular circumstances, where like you've dealt with hundreds of producers and you've seen hundreds of different circumstances, and you can pretty quickly diagnose what's going on, unlike a friend or another producer who you speak to.
Yeah, it's like trying to do your own therapy. It's kind of tough to do.
Absolutely.
Perspective, right? Like you're emotionally attached to the thing. I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm emotionally attached to my own, but to another person, not, right? So it's just a different perspective from someone else. And I know this sounds weird for the music industry, and I don't necessarily like recommend it for producers, but like I can't be friends with clients until they're done, like until our work agreement is up, then we can be buddies.
Sure.
I'm actually taking some of the free time I have on the holidays just to catch up with old clients and just say hello and what's up.
Of course,
But yeah, during the process, it doesn't help the person if I'm friends with them necessarily. So you don't want to be, not that I'm a therapist, but like just as an example, you don't really want to be friends with your therapist, right? Because then all their stuff, and you're like, what are you telling me that? I know you do this thing too. Like, there has to be a little bit of this, even though it seems weird, like authority.
A bit of a teacher-student authority.
Right. There has to be at least a little bit.
Someone making the tough call at times.
Right.
Just like putting you in your place.
And then after, when they graduate, then we can all be buddies. But it just isn't helpful during that. So yeah. Well, cool. The last little thing is, any advice you would give to others like that may have been in the same kind of situation where you were at, and doesn't have to just be like, oh, hire Dan, but something specific you want to dish out to people?
Yeah. Sorry, can you say that question again?
Just any advice, like maybe a big takeaway, like from all this, any advice you'd give to someone that was sort of in your same situation when you started, back when you were when you were at that sticking point, kind of, if someone was there, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, for sure. Well, if someone was in my exact situation 6 months ago, they'd be in a situation where like they've got a bit of work going on, but they're they're going through their savings slowly, and it's going to run out at some point. They've maybe got another year or so, another year or two, and then they're going to be in a tricky situation. I was in a situation where I was living in Vietnam, sort of semi-stuck here with COVID, or not sure whether I should go back. Flights were crazy. So it was like 10K to get a flight back to Australia.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, well, I can either figure it out how to do this online remote thing, or buy a 10K flight back to Australia, or I'm going to have to get some sort of like job here in Vietnam, maybe teaching English or something like that. It's like, that was my options. So it was pretty obvious to me that I was like, cool, I really got to make this like mixing, producing thing work as a full-time thing. And yeah, I mean, I expected it would take 6 to 12 months for it to work. But within, like I said, within 2 to 3 months, I was full-time booked. And I don't know exact figures right now, but looking at the next 3 to 6 months, I've got about 30K of work lined up. Like I'm okay, I can live off this. It's not crazy amounts of money set up for the next, it's not a crazy amount of money, but it's like enough, new projects coming in every week or two.
I'm going to extract the advice out of here from you, because you just said something, because you're like, 30K of work like lined up the next couple months. Not crazy, but it's cool. So to most people listening, that's crazy, right? That we're in your situation. So people watching this, what they just saw is basically you have new normals now.
Yeah, that's true.
Like what you consider, crazy is like way different than probably what a normal, mixer producer does. So with that, if I were to extract the advice from that, it's kind of like, hey, you need to be able to level up your new normal, level up your normals. And if you put in the work, like what is normal to you grows. So if making $1,000 a month was like, that used to be a big deal. It used to be a big deal to all of us, right? When we started, like, holy crap, I made $1,000 in a month.
Yeah, I can actually make money doing music. This is wild.
Yeah. And then you get to a point where you're like, 30K of work in the next 4 months. Yeah. Okay, cool. Of course, because it's like, yeah, of course. Like I'm a professional is what I do. Like it's my job to go get clients and, generate income for a business and provide value to the client. So it just becomes more normal. So, so
totally. And like, the couple of reasons that normal changes is, you start to make money and you get a bit of confidence boost those first few months. You're like, yeah, sick. Like I'm making some money now. And then you talk to all your other friends who actually have real careers and you're like, I'm not making money. Like everyone's making money. Everyone who's been everyone's like, all my friends are animators or designers and they're making money. Like they're all like, they're making money. So once you put yourself back in a perspective and it's,
so there's another piece of advice. It's your, like, it's your environment and your network. Like I'm in a bunch of these groups with like, business consultants and stuff, people in my field are, job consultant, but they're in other fields like real estate or fitness or whatever. And it's like, it's like in those groups, it's like, if you make less than $1 million a year, it's like, you're the bottom 1%, it's people that make a ton of money. And I think that I pay to be in those environments just because I don't have a lot of that around me in my real world, real life. Two, they obviously know more than I know because they've gotten to new levels and I want to learn from that. But three, it just kind of keeps you like in perspective. It's like, okay, cool, I'm doing all right, but like we shouldn't stop here. There's so much more growth that could happen. Not that it's all about the money necessarily, but it just shows you like, okay, cool, there's new bars to hit, because we want to always have new goals and things to reach, because that's exciting, So
yeah, absolutely. And just and I guess similarly, being in your Facebook group as well, like we've got a group with all your clients and sometimes jump in there and ask questions or respond to questions. But I think just the day-to-day, brushing shoulders with other people, other producers who are going through similar, growth periods or have gone through similar growth periods in past. And, there's guys in there, they're like, I made, just locked in a 15K client. You're like crazy, as, just being day-to-day, seeing those sort of people and the way they think and work. You don't necessarily get to see a lot of that information, even with your friends. Friends don't necessarily like openly share financials, with each other.
We're all business geeks.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think maybe it's
No, I know. Normal, yeah. When
yeah.
you hang with musicians, generally not, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, my
It's like
friends
a
not
weird
not
thing.
going to text me when they had a win. It's
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like
Me and Mark
yeah.
Eckert and some of our other buddies, we're the only weirdos that do that. Like, hey, save some money for the rest of us, asshole. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just being
But
silly.
I've got one mate who's we've got that sort of vibe that he's been really cool to bounce off. But for the most part, you don't see it on a daily basis, and having that
Sure.
sort of level up, that experience, as well has been good. And it's been, it also helps when it's the US dollar, which is always a bit more than the Australian dollar, and you realize you have to calculate in your head again. Oh, they made even more.
Right. Yeah. It's always nice. It's like a little extra, cherry on top. It's like, okay, this is cool, but oh wait, let me convert it. It's like sweet. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for doing this. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
Man, thank you.
Well, I know we have a big time gap. So it's early here, it's late there, so I'll let you get on with your night, man.
Thank you.
All right.
Good to
Take
chat.
care. Bye.
Speak soon. See you, man.